Okay, well, welcome everybody to our IDRPP's ECHO session. I'm really excited about today's session, so thank you so much for joining us. We are recording today's session. They will be stored on our Canvas pages as well as our YouTube channel, so you are always free to go back and review those and share that out with others. If you don't wish to be recorded, you can go ahead and leave. Not that we want you to. We would love for you to stay on. I just want to give again a big shout out to the Autism Council of Utah and the Autism Awareness License Plate for providing funding for this project. They have done a great job in making sure that we increase that awareness of autism and the early identification of it. So thank you to them. If you've never joined an ECHO session, thank you for joining us, and hopefully we'll be seeing you on a lot of these calls. We will always have the ability to do some professional networking. So if you are comfortable and not eating lunch and will turn on your camera, it's a great way for us to all see each other virtually and knowing where we can connect with each other. If we were all sitting in a room, we would all start chit-chatting and talking. And so, again, just trying to build up that professional networking in a virtual reality. We also always have a presenter. The presenter today are three amazing families that are going to be sharing us their story and their journey, which is always so helpful and wonderful to hear. And then we do have a case presentation and a small breakout group for discussions. Today we are going to skip that piece because, again, I think that hearing it from a parent's perspective and a family's perspective is always just amazing. We get a lot of great insights and resources to how to improve us as providers, as well as knowing how families are dealing with things. So please, again, if you're comfortable turning on your camera, letting us see each other, interact with us so you can put comments into chat. Joe, one of our hub members, is going to be monitoring that chat for us. So he will make sure your questions and comments get answered and asked. And then just another plug, if you have a case that you want to discuss and get some amazing resources from everybody on this call, please consider submitting a case narrative, a case discussion, presentation, whatever you want to call it. It's a great way to learn from all these amazing people on the call. We do talk about families and sensitive topics, so please protect their individual privacy. If you have any questions, you can reach out to a hub member. They all have an asterisk in front of their name, or as I now reminded them, they will then have it on there right now. So they're easy to identify in the chat. Renaming your profile and raising your hand. We've all been on Zoom for a while and probably know how to do that. But again, if you'll take a minute and rename your profile so that I can, not just I can know, but all of us can know who we are on the call and where we're from. So like if I see Lindsay Nix, I know she works at the ASSERT program. So when she shares something, I then can be able to reach out to her. Again, just that professional networking. Throughout today's session, we will be dropping the survey link in chat. The surveys are how we send out certificate of attendance. And again, thank you to everybody on the calls who always complete those surveys. It lets us know information that we can turn back to our, oh my gosh, I forgot, the people who provide the services, the money for us to provide these services. And again, changes that we as a hub team can make based on your guys' input. So thank you so much. And that's how we mail out those credit for attendance. Canvas is where we store everything. So if you would like access to our Canvas page, please just email us at autismecho@aggies.usu.edu, and we will make sure you get access to our Canvas page. Just another plug for those case studies. If you are nervous about sharing your case, I would be more than happy to share the case for you. It's amazing the resources and recommendations that you guys all come up with. That, sometimes going out into being a home visitor or an early intervention provider, we wonder if we're making sure that we're doing the best practices. And so hearing resources and ideas from everybody on the call is a great way to just get new insights on some of those cases that we're working on. We do have social media, so if you want to take a minute and follow us on social media, we share information, we share resources. Hopefully all of you guys have heard and read the new CDC's report on early indicators of autism. If not, we've shared that link on our Facebook and Instagram posts, so you can read more about that here soon. And then I'm going to stop sharing, and I've warned the parents that whoever I see first on my screen is who I'm going to call on. So Kristen, you are the first one that I am seeing, so I'm going to have you go ahead and share with us.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I live in Vernal, Utah, and me and my husband, David, we have a crazy neurodivergent household. 5 children. My oldest is 18 and my youngest is 4. She'll turn 5 soon, which is kind of crazy to me. And what I thought I'd kind of initially start with is just when I first realized that I needed extra resources for my kids. So probably about 10 years ago, one of my children was starting school and he's now in middle school. And so it wasn't 10 years ago, it would have been 7 years ago. But he was struggling as a kindergartner. And the teacher, who was such a trooper, superstar teacher, she didn't want to tell me like how bad it was. And so anyway, eventually it came out that, he was chewing through all the crayons and scaring the other kids in certain ways, and really just responding to this new situation in a way that was overwhelming to him. And I remember that phone call I made. My husband was out of town on a trip, and I called him and I just cried. And I was like, I guess it's the first time I've realized, I don't know what we're dealing with here. Maybe it is the spectrum. And I'm such a different person now than I was then, because that was a scary thought to me. And it's different. It's scary in a new way now, but in different ways now that I've lived through different things. But I just felt like I don't know what to do. And so we went to the pediatrician, and anyway, his journey has been a little bit different, but and he is would be a level 1 autism, where we've had very minimal services outside of having an IEP at school. Then I was married. My husband and I had been divorced, and my older 3 children, and I single mom household. And then I met my husband, David Forbes, who is from Logan. So I don't know if a lot of you are there at USU in Logan, but he very unwisely hitched his wagon up to mine, and we and moved to Vernal once we got married. So we were dating long distance, and he spent a lot of time with my kids. But at the same time, nothing can prepare you for what that's like. And we within a year, had our son Benjamin after being married. And Benjamin just turned 7 years old. He is my child that has right now level 3 autism, fits his abilities. And I lately have been using the term more often, like profound autism, to kind of identify the difference of what his challenges have been. But when he was a baby, I had 3 kids that I had kind of able to compare with, as far as, different stages and just different little things. The first thing that I realized when Benji would he would bang his head. He was the cutest little stinker under a year old, and his whole forehead would be covered in bruises. And I know that well, at least the pediatrician, said, well, some kids do that. But I knew that, there was something going on with Benjamin. He didn't have a diagnosis. He was just a baby. And I gently talked to my husband, just to me, there are little signs and things that would be maybe autism. And that was when he's getting to be 2 years old. And we're really grateful to know the people at Prime Time for Kids, which is out here in Vernal. It's a wonderful service for 0 to 3 years old, and actually one of the first in the state, and they're really amazing. And that's how how we got connected with Justin Benson. I don't know if you want us to call you out on here. Justin's who invited me to participate here. Wonderful speech language pathologist who was working with Prime Time. And that was a group of service providers that brought a lot of, there was the perfect combination of professionalism and warmth, is how I'll put it, because I really felt like they liked my kids, and wanted to see us and help us. This was also during 2020, so it was weird, but I had done Prime Time before, and so I was already familiar with some of the things and kind of how we were working around it. And in fact, Justin would come over to do visits with Benjamin, and we'd just go in the backyard, and we would have enough wonderful fresh air so that we could make those things happen. But those visits with the professional providers, like many of you are, was very helpful in that process of understanding what to look for. And also, I feel like for my husband, who this is his first time being a parent, it was pretty alarming to him that here's his crazy wife who reads way too much and reads studies and knows things that you don't necessarily need to know for just, as a parent. And I'm kind of hinting at autism as a part of maybe Benjamin's journey. And he was really hesitant to say, well, he's a baby. Or he wasn't hesitant to say that. He would say, he's a baby. Like, he was hesitant to get testing done. And I was okay with that. And it was also weird, being 2020, there wasn't the same options as there once were. Do you need to interrupt me? Are you wanting to ask a question? No? Okay. My screen just changed. I didn't know if I was being flagged or something. And so when we started talking about that, it became the hurdle in front of us was, how are we going to get testing? And also, we both initially felt very hesitant in trusting that process. We were like, well, are they going to really look at everything? Are they really going to really see Benjamin? And like, I didn't want just, a casual label for, that the parents came to us, so they want that. I know that that's probably a stereotype of parents sometimes not taking the professionalism seriously, but we just were concerned. We were hesitant. And so anyway, we went through the process, and we were really blessed to be able to have Benjamin assessed with providers at the University of Utah that work through the Department of Health. It helped us financially because it was through a program that covered much of the cost of getting assessed for autism. And then also they made the choice to coordinate our the visits, not just virtually. That was really my hang up. I was like, how can you assess him virtually? That just didn't sit right. But we're in a pandemic, so everyone's just doing the best they can. And they chose to come out to Vernal for other kind of coordinated visits they had coming to the Department of Health out here, and did their assessments with Benjamin in person. Once we had the diagnosis, I can't remember officially if this was in 2021. I don't remember officially the level that they put on that paper, but here we are 4 years later, and he's 7 years old. He is still fully nonverbal. He's had some I guess what I would say is major regressions from some of the things that he used to do. He does have, he's not toilet trained yet, potty trained. I don't know. Once someone's 7 years old, I don't know what to call it, but we're still doing that. And he has had periods of quite severe self-harm. And so that's the other part. I can't, you're going to need to tell me how I'm doing on time, but that was the other part I thought I'd talk about, was our experience when Benjamin was kind of ramping up with self-harm. So this was 2 years ago right now. Ben had already been doing services, ABA. As soon as we had a diagnosis, he was doing ABA services up to 5 times a week. And then also he was in speech and OT ever since, he was in prime time, and that transitioned into the preschool that he was able to go through the school district. And so he was receiving all the recommended hours and services that were available. But the part that we were overwhelmed with was just that, he suddenly would not be doing well with his health. He would be you could tell he didn't feel good. He would, it just was like a total different kid. Right. And, we didn't realize really, and actually, who knows, but I really wasn't sure about, what was bothering him, but I did notice that he did have constipation. So we would work with him on that. We were doing the things we thought we should do. And that was kind of, in the end, now we understand that played a significant role in his self-harm and his struggle. And so so he would have been 3 years old, no, 4 years old, because now I guess it started when he was just before he turned 4. And he was self-harming terribly, as far as hitting himself. With his fists and with his palms. And he would try to use the hardest part of his palm, and mostly just right to his head. And it was scary. And it was scary for our kids. We were taking him into the pediatrician. We were asking our service providers, like, what should we do? Everything I read says this, happens, but why? And what can we do? And let me also throw in that this was in Ben's season of, now we're kind of used to it, but we were learning like just how diabolical this wonderful little boy was. He could get out of any locked house. He could climb our fences, 7-foot fences. He could climb the tree 20 feet high. And he loved, he and little sister actually both have like that socioperceptive heavy or large muscle impact need. So doing scary stuff that way, climbing high and jumping off things. And so I would say that maybe was when we were starting to just be in our PTSD of like, this is a lot. What are we doing? Like, how are we going to protect this child? And how are we going to, keep our heads on straight so we can provide for the family and just be a normal family. That was kind of our introduction into like, we don't feel like a normal family anymore. We feel, you kind of wonder what it looks like from the outside a little, but you're also just on the inside going, wow, there's people that live like this, what can we do? And I bring that up because it all kind of happened at the same time. Um, and it was pretty overwhelming. So once Ben started into the self-harm, we really were like, okay, by the way, we're really struggling here, like family in crisis. Can anyone help us? And we took him to the dentist. We were like, please check his teeth. Tell us like what's hurting him, what's going on. We took him to several pediatricians, a mental health provider in town, and then of course our service providers. And this is me, just my memory of it. It doesn't properly represent exactly what happened, I don't think, but it felt very much like people just, the best they could do is say, oh, that's hard. Yeah. Ooh, good luck with that. And it wasn't where I was just like, good luck with it. No, we need help. Like, where are the services for crisis care, for families? That's what it felt like to us. We're in crisis. And I'm sure I need to kind of wrap up, but when the climax of this that I thought might be helpful for you, for maybe for somebody, we weren't getting any clear ideas, and so I just told my husband, I said, listen, let's just drive out to the primary children's ER. Let's just go. And this was spring break 2 years ago, and our big kids were spending time with their dad, and so it was just us with the two little kids, and we're like, okay, let's do this. And I remember that drive out there wasn't even a minute that Benjamin wasn't like walloping himself. And we had bought helmets. We have, it's funny, like in our house you just will randomly come across a lacrosse helmet. We had a whole collection of boxing helmet gear and all these things. And so, but that drive, I'm not going to get way into this because you guys don't need to see me cry, but it also paired with Benjamin having a very definite aversion to women, and that included me. So he would harm and kind of close down and um, by the sound of women's voices, and even just if I mean, I can't even describe to you like how this is probably the lowest point in my life when I realized that I was part of the problem for him, whatever was going on there. And it was just one of those things like, what is going on and how can we help him? And especially, this is so much bigger than us. We felt very overwhelmed. So we get to the ER there and we check in, and actually I should have sent you this picture to show. One of the things that we were doing wrong and we didn't know it is we were restraining him. So not with restraints, but when he would start hitting, I would hold him and I would hold his arms down. And we hadn't really learned that actually was going to like create further like problems with the situation. So one of the times the day before this that I had restrained Ben, just right over there actually, and I was trying to calm him and keep him from hurting himself because he had also started trying to hit himself against walls or corners and things. And so I was holding him tightly, and this kid is strong, like he's like a muscle man, right? So he leaned forward and then he just cracked back as hard as he could against me, and he got me like beautifully right here, and I had the bloodiest looking bruise that was all the way down to below my cheekbones, and it was like awesome looking bruise. I mean, but it was pretty scary. So we're showing up at the primary ZR, and I felt so good about this choice because I knew that these people are there to help children, and they are professionals. And I just knew, and that is exactly what happened. So to the skip to the end, like, yes, we got some help and resources. However, I have a child showing up that doesn't know I'm on here. I'm on a Zoom call, honey. However, it totally blew my mind a little bit, or caught me off guard, when I was brought into a room with a social worker. And nothing had prepared me for that. Now I totally understand why. But at the time, it was so scary. And I had Ariella, my little girl, with me, so she would have been 2 at the time. And she's sitting on my lap. We're brought into this room. I look like maybe I've, been, a battered wife or whatever. And this young, very young, but very kind social worker is having to talk to me and assess the situation, and if it's safe, and if our children are in danger. And none of that had occurred to me. Like, I had nothing to prepare me for just that realization. And basically the option that she said is, right now it'll depend on what the doctors say, but if we decide that Benjamin needs to be brought into the psychiatric care unit for children, you will not be able to come with him. And that, as a parent, that was terrifying, because I didn't know. I was trying to catch up as she's telling me these things, and I am very grateful for the ability to ask questions, but also speak clearly and stay calm, because I feel like I was able to help represent the whole situation. But I've since then thought often of families that are scared and overwhelmed. They just want to help their kids, and it might, their anxiety, or their just, maybe it's not their strong point, they might not come across the right way. But nobody loves their kid like they do. At the same time, there's people that aren't taking care of their children, and so they need to, what a hard job, right? But as you guys are service providers, I don't know why, but I just felt that it would be worth bringing up that so many times these families are in crisis. And in our family situation, it has kind of been like a compounding situation where there's not just one child with autism. And we're looking into a lot of things. We want to know, are there environmental things that are contributing to our family? We know there's genetic things. We want to explore lots of options. We're doing all the ABA and therapies and things that are suggested, but we also, it's a constant, there is a feeling of like, there's just not a normal. And I think a lot about my older kids, and all of my kids really, and how this situation of severe and profound autism, how it affects families, it affects holidays. You wouldn't change anything, but at the same time, I guess it's a voice that I would hope could be heard too. And I don't have an answer for any of these thoughts, but I just wanted to emphasize that it is, you are serving, and you are doing a very important work, and it is, maybe you're not going to see people at their very best, but so often it is a crisis situation, even if it is kind of like, well, that family handles it really well. Well, some families, I guess you don't know all the things that are coming into it financially, and even the just grief cycles that you have to go through, and understanding. Yeah. So I thought that's what I would share today. I'm sure that's all the time that you have, but I'm willing to answer any questions, and anyone that has suggestions for our family, I'm more than open to hearing from you.
Kristen, thank you so much for sharing your story. Just so everybody on the call is understanding, we are going to leave some time at the end for us to be able to ask answer or ask any questions that the families have for us and that we have for the families. So be sure to jot those down. I'm going to ask Joey. Oh my gosh. And you tell me your husband's name. And I blanked. Adam. No. Yes?
Yes.
Adam.
Yes, Adam.
Okay. I was like in my mind going, no, that's not right. Yes, that is. No. Okay. So Joey and Adam are going to share their story. And you guys just let me know when you're ready for me to share your video.
All right. Like she said, my name is Joey. This is my husband, Adam. And we're also from Vernal, Utah. So I do know Kristen pretty well. So it was good to hear her story on here. And a lot of things that she said, like, honestly, like, reminded me of so much that happened to us early in our journey. So we have 2 children. They are right now 14 and 15, soon to be 15 and 16. A boy is the oldest, Max, and a girl, Dempsey. And so yes, we are in the throes of puberty, which, you know, as you go through this journey, you realize, like, you know, it's hard enough going through puberty when you're neurotypical. So when you add all those hormones and those big emotions and those growing bodies, like Max is 6 feet tall, probably over 300 pounds. Dempsey is at least 3 or 4 inches taller than me. And it's, you know, what they say, they outgrow cute at some point. And so it's, you know, it's a whole different ballgame. But about 5 years ago, I made a video. And so we just wanted to play that because that kind of gives like the basics of the beginning of our story. And then it's about 6 minutes long. And then after that, we can catch you up to where we are now.
Seeing it now, Justin?
Yep, got it.
How old are you?
How old are you?
How many years old are you?
Years old are
Say, I'm 11.
you? I'm 11 years old.
Yeah, Dempsey, how old are you?
How old are you?
Say, I'm 10.
Samson. Apple.
Guess who used the potty for her first time ever? Ball. Have a great day.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Dancy. I can see
I
you.
can see you. Smile.
You don't like the camera?
Yes, camera.
Yes, camera?
Smile.
How come you're crying?
I'm gonna be crying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't know what Mama's doing? Mama's always trying to figure out what you're thinking. Why are you kicking? Why are you kicking me? You don't like me taking pictures?
Take a picture.
Does it make you nervous?
Make you nervous.
Yeah? You don't like it?
No
Is
more
it-
pictures.
No more pictures?
No more pictures.
No more? You guys are pretty chill right now. Who is it?
Perhaps I was talking when I should have been listening.
All right, that's the end. So, let's see, where do we catch up to now? So, they, it's interesting. We lived in St. George at the time they were initially we suspected that they had autism. They weren't. We did do early intervention while we were there, but then when they were 3 and 4 is when we ended up moving up to Vernal, which was really hard because it was rural, and at the time there was very limited resources. And as a parent, you don't even know what you're doing in the beginning. You're just trying to figure it out. So they were eventually diagnosed at Tri-County Health. And they've had maybe one other diagnosis since then, or evaluation besides educational assessments. But they've never been evaluated under the current system of like levels. But I would assume that they would be level 3 support. They cannot be left unsupervised. While they do have language, it's 1 to 2 words at a time. There's a lot of echoing, and they're able to communicate ideas. Interestingly enough, through movie quotes, they'll try to express different feelings that they have, and just different quirks that way. Right now, with puberty exacerbating, a lot of the issues that we deal with are very high anxiety, fixation on ideas and things and people, obsessive compulsive behaviors of not being able to transition or leave the house until they go through certain rituals, or they repeat every night before bed. My daughter has to repeat a list of like 50 things just to help her like move on to the next part of her nighttime routine. We have dealt with, at the time of this video was kind of when self-harm was really ramping up, so it was during the pandemic. So being stuck at home definitely exacerbated that. And I just remember one day my daughter is the worst when it comes to self-harm. She'll bite herself, and she'll slam her head into the floor, into the walls. She's made holes actually through the sheetrock, with her head. And I just remember coming in her bedroom one time, and she had been, banging her head into the wall, and she'd caught the corner of the light switch. And by the time I got to her, there was blood, because it was a head wound. So there was just blood all over her, all over the room. And I just lost it. Like, because like Kristen said, it's a crisis, and you don't even know who to ask, who to talk to. When she was younger, she did get out of the house one time and went into a neighbor's house when I thought she was napping, and I didn't realize that she was gone until the police knocked on my door and were like, "Are you missing a daughter?" And I was like, "No, she's napping," and I go to her bedroom and she's not there. And she'd gone into a neighbor's back door that wasn't home, because she could see toys through their back door. And at that time, she didn't have any language. So when they came home, they found her, and she couldn't tell them who she was or anything like that. So the police are just going around trying to find the parents. And so that was a time when we did have to have a social worker come to our house and assess what was going on. And it was very traumatizing as a parent to have to go through that process. Luckily, the social worker was very kind and reassured me she was there to help, and that she just, wanted to help us know how to keep our child safe and things like that. But and then I'm gonna turn it over to my husband for maybe oh, one thing I did want to mention, because it's not all trauma either. Like, in the past few years, we've had some huge breakthroughs and successes with our kids. We were able to take them to Lagoon, and they lasted the whole day. They waited in all the lines. They went on every single roller coaster. This past year, we were able to take them on their first commercial flight to Arizona, and they did amazing. We didn't even use devices. And so like those small things are a big deal to us. And but yeah, and then I'll just turn it over to my husband, because we have some recent challenges that we'd like to share as well.
So the most recent challenge, well, it was a couple of years ago. We had been getting word from Dempsey's teachers that she was, she would have a meltdown here or there, and we that was normal. So we figured, okay, well, they're just dealing with things that we deal with at home. And in the IEP, they mentioned that there would be a sensory deprivation room, which was kind of a padded closet where Dempsey could go and kind of calm down. And as it was sold to us and presented, it seemed like a good option that she could go somewhere where she could, I don't know, just settle. Well, we found out later that that's not really what was happening. What was happening was when Dempsey would have a meltdown, or when she would start getting audibly loud, she would be wrestled to the floor, held, and then she would be fought into this sensory deprivation room where she would be held until she many times would urinate, and then after that happened, she would be forced to clean up the urine. We later found out that it was also these teachers were not getting any help from the district, and the only help that they could get was from the school police officers that were coming around to their room. So the police officers then started fighting her into this closet and keeping her in there as well. So we didn't hear about any of this. We didn't hear that the police were involved. We didn't hear that she was being fought into this closet. And Dempsey was fighting back. And Dempsey was, we were wondering why when she came home, she was so on edge and so full of anxiety and so just a wreck. And she was causing the whole family to be a wreck as well. So I get a letter in the mail, and it's charging Dempsey with 12 counts of crimes.
Criminal assault.
So there was 2 counts of criminal mischief and 10 counts of assault on a school employee. So we went through the process of calling the probation officer, and I said, "Is this a joke?" And he said, "No, Mr. Madison, this is very serious. She's going to have to account for what she did." And I said, "Well, what does that mean?" And he said, "Well, she's going to have to come to court and she's going to have to testify." And I'm like, "Good freaking luck." And he said, and I said, "Well, what might happen?" And they said, "Well, she might have to serve prison time juvenile detention, or she might have to do community service." And I was like, "Do you realize that you're charging essentially a baby, a toddler, mentally with crimes? She doesn't have the ability to commit crimes. She has autism, and it's very severe." So it wasn't until I got this letter that I found out that all of this was going down. So we had to get a lawyer involved in order to start enacting some changes. And come to find out that a lot of what it was that there wasn't good training and there wasn't good support from the school district to the teachers. And one of the big problems also that we found is that the teachers very, very often are kind of hamstrung. They have to play this game. They have to walk this tightrope between making sure that the district's happy and diminishing and decreasing their liability so that nothing happens, but also doing what's right for the child. So what that means is sometimes they don't do what's best for the child because they're trying to reduce liability for the school district. And honestly, I don't even know how to process all this today. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what we went through. Eventually the charges were dropped because they realized that what they did was absolutely crazy. It was ridiculous. But it took a long time. I mean, here you are kind of in limbo for like 6 months wondering, well, what's going to happen to my kid? They said, well, do we need a translator so she can go on the stand and testify? And I'm like, no, she can't talk. Can mom or dad help her communicate? It's like, no, we can't, because we don't know what she's saying half the time when she's at home. So we went through this whole process with them, and they finally got to the point where they understood. But so the very idea that there would be a cop, a police officer in a school that thought it would be a good idea to bring criminal charges on a child with autism at that level, it is madness. It's absolute madness. So anyway, I'll leave that scenario. What's the next step, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, you guys are welcome to ask any specific questions about that. I think what we learned from the situation in a whole is like there was a definite breakdown in communications on on all sides. Like, as a parent, I don't think I realized how much of a bulldog advocate that I needed to be until this happened. Since it's happened, like, it's been great. There's a lot of turnover, as a lot of you know, in education with the special needs department. We finally feel like we have some aides and some teachers who are listening to us and really want to understand our children. They're not holding them to this standard of they need to perform, they need to comply, they need to conform to, you know, what a neurotypical classroom expects of them. Like, they're basing their IEP goals around the fact that they could be present, they could be participating, even though they're refusing to do what they're asked. They're still presently, you know, communicating those needs, and that's what's important to us for our children at the level that they're at. And it's just unfortunate that there was this breakdown in the system of lack of training from law enforcement and educators and parents, and, you know, even medical teams, that, you know, it took this level of breakdown for everyone to like wake up and see like that things need to be different. But
this was coming shortly after we had our home burnt down.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in our lives at the time.
Dempsey, we don't know if she started the fire or not, my daughter, but she was in the room where the fire started, and we barely got her out alive. I had to go in there and grab her. And so we were dealing with that. We were dealing with not having a home, and we were dealing with, well, then that all started after. So it just was a very trying time. So, yeah.
But yeah, we just want to say that we appreciate everyone here. It's always important to have these conversations and, you know, learn as much as we can, because every parent is doing this for the first time, and the more you can advise parents on, you know, what to expect, at least from a systemic standpoint of where to go and what to do, and the resources, it's just really important. So thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I am so sorry that you guys have gone through this. It's certainly eye-opening to us on the call, and lots of comments on there. Just thank you for sharing that story. You know, sometimes we think that that doesn't happen, and it really does. And so continuing to do some of that training. I know that the Autism Council of Utah has been really working with law enforcement on different trainings and how to interact with individuals on the autism spectrum. So again, just that ongoing work that is never done. And I'm sorry that you guys have been caught in that that crosshair of that. But thank you so much for sharing your story. I loved your quote of that we started our journey on the good, the loud, the hard, and the beautiful. And I think that was a great summary on just parenthood in general. So thank you so much. We're going to turn the time over to Abby. And then again, like I said, after Abby, we will open it up to discussions, as well as questions that you as the families want to ask us professionals. So Abby.
Hi, thank you guys so much for having me. I definitely appreciate it. So my son, his name is Abraxas, or we call him Brax for short, and he is 9 years old. He actually has multiple disabilities, but including autism. So when I was pregnant with him, I caught a virus called CMV, cytomegalovirus, and it caused a traumatic brain injury in womb. And so that caused cortical dysplasia as well as cerebral palsy. He has right-sided hemiplegia. So he is weak on the right side. He also has epilepsy that thankfully just barely presented last year when he was 8 years old. And then has he also was diagnosed with autism at 3 years old. So and we found out about his cerebral palsy and his TBI in womb when he was 6 months old. So it was a whirlwind of diagnoses and doctors and finding out like what to do here and there and everywhere, and finding out about what services were available, and it it was a lot, and I was doing it all by myself. His dad left when he was like 3 months old, so I did it all by myself. Single parenting a child with disabilities has been the single hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I think just parenting him in general has been super, super hard. So he's 9 now. He's in 3rd grade, and he is still nonverbal. He communicates with gestures, kind of. And I mean, I always say I'm learning a language. I'm learning his language. I'm learning how he communicates, because he has not been able to learn how I communicate. So I'm going to learn how he chooses to communicate. I'm going to figure that out one day. And I mean, I do think that being a single parent with him has given me the opportunity to, or me and him, the opportunity to have a very, very, very close bond, which is great in some aspects, but also really, really hard in other aspects because I can't go and do anything by myself. Even now, I have been with my current partner for about 4 years, and we have and he has 2 kids as well. So Brax now has stepbrothers, and I mean that's been a whole journey in it of itself. But I mean, even now, trying and doing things as a couple is so almost impossible without some kind of help. And I mean, that looks very, very different for everyone, but we get to go out at least once a year. I would say it's about once a year that we get time to ourselves. But so I think Brax's main struggles are communication. Obviously, communication is very, very difficult. Trying to understand what he wants and needs before he gets escalated, I think, is probably one of our biggest challenges. He is also very violent when he gets frustrated and upset, and he self-harms quite a bit. He has had like big open sores on his forehead this big from headbanging, or even just like he like rubs his head on carpet or even like on cement. He hits himself frequently. He bites himself, like he has bit through like his skin on his hand. And it reminded me, or your story, Joey, reminded me of my son, and just like walking into like a big bloody mess and just being terrified. It is one of the scariest things that ever happens, is like, where is all this blood coming from? Why, like what's happening? How do I handle this? So I definitely relate. But I do, we also live in rural Utah, or Tooele, Utah, and so we do commute into Salt Lake for almost everything. I feel lucky that we're only an hour away. But I did want to share this story about school, and so my son did go to school in Tooele County School District. He was the only child with like as severe disabilities as he had in the district at that time, which is crazy to me, or I guess in the school at that time, which is crazy to me because it's not that rural. There's a lot of people in Tooele County. So, but anyway, he had a brand new teacher and all brand new paraprofessionals, and they didn't know how to handle it. So anyway, he's always struggled with eating. He's on the super tiny side, and I just like always told the school to at least try to feed him something, and if he doesn't want it, that's fine, but at least try. And then he also has a cortical vision impairment, so he has vision specialists going into the school from Utah Schools for the Deaf and Blind. And his vision specialist reached out to me and was like, hey, I'm very concerned about him and his teacher. I saw today she was force feeding him and just like trying to shove a spoon in his mouth, and he was turning away, and that's obviously like very clear communication that he doesn't want something. So she just said the teacher kept forcing him. So I pulled him from that school as fast as I could, and we haven't been back since. And he actually goes to a school in Davis County now, and so our commute every single day is 110 miles to and from, and it's draining. It's draining on all of us. It's draining my bank account. It's putting miles on my car. There's just so very many things in this world of autism that we live that a lot of people do not have to go through on a daily basis. And I actually have been lucky enough to get a job with the Utah Parent Center, which has honestly opened my eyes a ton as far as resources and available services. But I don't know what I would do if I didn't have this community within the Utah Parent Center and the resources and the reach and the networking that I have been able to do while working here. And I've only worked here for about 2 years. So before that, we were surviving, hanging on, and now I do feel like I have a community to lean on, and I think that is probably one of the best things I've done for myself, is finding a community of people in very similar situations as yourself, and being vulnerable and being able to express like the hard and the not and the ugly and the not so good and the frustrations with someone that's not within that immediate family. And another thing is it's been really, really hard on my stepchildren, just seeing how different my son is, and also having to deal with Brax on like that daily basis. It's draining for them. They get exhausted with even just like hearing him cry for 6 hours straight. Something that the Utah Parent Center does is like a sibling support group. They put on sib shops or workshops, activities and things like that for siblings, and how to kind of cope with they have a journal and they have other tools on how to cope with having a sibling with a disability. I did want to kind of wrap up. My son is getting out of school early today, and that's why I'm in the car, and I just wanted to apologize about that as well. But yeah, again, I'm open to questions and comments. I did see something in the chat, but I will jump on there and see it.
So, Abby, there's one question here. It says that I'm curious how you found those groups and the community supports and whether they are structured or more informal.
So we at the Utah Parent Center have put on quite a few like parent support groups, but I also do have kind of informal support through my coworkers at the Utah Parent Center. And so we are putting on a couple of support groups, but I think maybe it might look a little more informal as to like finding your people and the people that you connect with best and things like that. It might look like walking up to a parent at school pickup or school drop off and saying like, hey, do you want to get together and have some coffee and just like debrief from the day? Some things like that.
So then, Rachel, you asked how do we contact the Utah Parent Center or get people involved? I did drop their link in there in case people don't know about the Utah Parent Center. They also have a ton of resources around specific disabilities. You are always free to reach out to Utah Parent Center to help them advocate for your child at IEPs or your families at IEPs or IFSPs. It has some great resources around that. I encourage you to also join their newsletter. They share information like the sibling group. They also, since this is Autism Awareness Acceptance Month, they have had a lot of support and celebrations for that. So now we're just going to open this up to questions that the speakers have for us or that you guys have for the speakers. So if I always want to save my questions in case other participants have questions, but I have a question because all of you guys talked about just being in crisis. So as providers, how can we do a better job about supporting you when you're in crisis or even asking you if you're in crisis? Kristen, do you mind starting that question?
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the things is I think in training it would be helpful if there was just kind of a breakdown on what the reality is for a lot of families with children with disabilities. I say that because not heavily, but I've had a few experiences where, you know, somebody that is not married with children that is working with us and not that that is a problem, but it just doesn't seem like there's an understanding of what, first of all, maybe even just life's like with kids, but then also what extra challenges there are, because I don't want to have to, I want to be able to be honest and say things like, you know, yeah, Ben got on the roof and it was this, you know, scary situation but this is what happened. And it's, you kind of, like I mentioned before, that terrifying feeling when you think, oh, wait, they are interpreting that to mean no one's taking care of this child and this situation. These parents aren't doing everything they can. And so that is something that I don't want to have to be hesitant about what the reality is in order to think that I need to protect our family and not end up in a situation where someone's misunderstanding or just has no concept of what it is that the families are dealing with. So I think it's beneficial if more, maybe there could be just training about like what that is, but it's like, that their families are going, there's just a lot. I guess that's what I would say.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that answer, Joey or Adam. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna like second guess your name every time now.
You can call me whatever.
Whatever. There you go. Anything you guys have to add to that?
She pretty much covered it. I think, if providers can, when someone does share something traumatic like that, just any sort of validation is usually what we're seeking. Like, tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me, like, but yeah, it's such a complicated and traumatic experience. It's hard to paint with a broad brush and say this is what you should do, because it does depend on the circumstances and the situation. But yeah, definitely validating that parent and what they're experiencing and what they're feeling, and not minimize or saying, oh, good luck with that, or anything like that. Because we did have in the early days, like pediatricians, because early on as a parent, you're wanting to try everything. You go through this kind of rite of passage of like, I got to try everything. I'm going to change the diet. I'm going to try all these alternative methods and ways of treating autism, because you feel like there's this small window when you can make a bigger difference. And when I have a pediatrician saying like, oh, it'd be too hard to change the diet, like I could never do it, like that's not what I want to hear as a parent. So yeah, just supporting and validating parents, I think, is really important along the journey.
If I could just say something, I don't know. I would say going through this, we don't just, Kristen mentioned it. She's like, I don't know what I didn't know how to deal with this. And that was our experience too. We didn't know what was normal, what was not normal, what is an ordinary thing, what crisis is and what crisis isn't. So I would recommend that when you ask, like, I think it's a great idea to ask, are you in crisis? But then to also define, what is crisis? I have no idea what crisis is. All I know is that I'm dealing with some things, but I might be at a 12 or a 13, where you might think that I'm at like a 6 or a 5, and 10 is like an unhealthy number. You know what I mean? So that would be helpful, like, to define what crisis is.
Great. And then Abby, I don't know if you have anything to add.
I definitely think that you're onto something, Adam, by like defining what crisis is, and maybe even with like an asterisk, I guess, like it can look different for every family. It could, but I want to I want to explain about my son's comp care doctor. She's complex care doctor. Her name's Nancy Murphy, and she's amazing. But she, every single time I go and see her, she asks me how I'm doing, how my family's doing, and she gives me a hug. And I know a lot of people like aren't touchy-feely, but like the first time she did that with me, I bawled. I just cried. And I was like, I've never had any doctors like ask me how I'm doing, like mentally, physically at all, with regards. Also, that's my son. There's Brax. But in regards to him and to caring for him and how I am mentally in that regards. And sometimes I break down and I'm like, I'm not okay right now. And then she says, get in therapy. And and she does give me like a lot of other resources, but like I love the fact that it is every single time I see her, which is like every 3 months, she asks me how I am, how I'm doing caretaking, how I feel taking care of him. And I think that's something that can never be replaced in my mind. Like that, I could never ask for something better than just someone asking me how I am. It's, I think it's very important.
Yeah, that validation that you guys are all talking about and being able to be open and honest about it, right? That we're here to support you. So I appreciate that. And then that did spur a lot of additional questions. So let me go through the chat. And do any of you have, do any of your children have an aide assigned to them during school? And if so, does that help? So it looks like Joey's leaned forward. Do you want to take that first?
Yeah, both of our kids have one-on-one aides, like comparative, just because they are, I mean, in UNA school district here, they, I'm sure, are in the top 1% of, you know, challenging behaviors as far as the district goes. So yes, my son has a one-on-one aide, and my daughter actually has two that tag team because it can get intense, and they you know, they need breaks from her at times. So yeah, we finally got that in place for them.
I'm so sorry. I have a follow-up question. How long did it take you to get one-on-one aides for them?
So it wasn't a matter of, it was very clear from early in probably around like 5th grade that they weren't going to be able to be with the group of kids, and not because they were being secluded because of their behaviors, but because they couldn't even manage their own emotions being around even, you know, the special ed classroom. And so they've both had to have their own separate spaces, and then they do join with the class occasionally, but it wasn't something that we had to fight for. It just was very clear that there was no way they were going to function in the day without having a one-on-one person with them.
Abby, in the IEP, you have to request that.
Yeah, it did have to be documented.
That is the way that you, the pathway that you would go in order to get a one-on-one.
And we did use the parent center too. We found a lot of resources there and reached out in order to, you know, see if advocates could come with us to the IEP, you know, so that we could know what our rights were and know what we could ask for. Because you never want to burn the bridges in education, especially when you have profound autism and your child doesn't speak. You know, you don't want to create contentious relationships there. But you also want to make sure that you're getting everything that you're allowed to get and ask for, you know, because a lot of times that information is not volunteered from the educator's side. So, but yeah, we found a lot of resources in the Utah Parent Center. Even when we were going through the legal situation, we reached out to them. So many people were shocked that this was even happening to us, but yeah, we were able to find a lawyer and do all the things that we needed to do that way. So yeah, we highly recommend the Utah Parent Center for resources.
Kristen.
Benjamin's in a contained classroom that he's at a charter school that has a special ed teacher and over the contained unit for moderate to severe disability. And there's about 5 or 6 aides that are for the whole class. But Ben does require, I think he would be in the top group that's requiring the most attention. And then before spring break, we had basically been asked to come get him early most days because he's been struggling and was hitting. And so the solution really that was asked of us was just to start coming and getting him early. But we're back at school now, and we worked on some things over the break with his digestion, and he seems to be feeling better. So it's really interesting. It's not like sometimes it's the helpers are kind of like, well, we need to help Ben know that he has to behave. And I always go back to, Temple Grandin has said something like, if you have a child with behavioral problems or a child with autism with behavioral problems, you need to find the pain. Where's the pain? Because often that is for some children, if there's a change in behavior, there's something going on. And with our son, that's overall proven true. And so it's mystery though, because we might find progress, but then he's not doing well again. And then at school, they just aren't quite set up to handle if he's not having a good day.
My son does not have a one-on-one aide. He is just in a very small classroom. He has a teacher and 2 paras, and 6. There's 6 kids in his class, so it's a pretty small classroom. And his paras are both RBTs, and so they incorporate a lot of like ABA into the school day without, I guess, technically doing ABA. So that's kind of the setup his school has now. But I have asked for one-on-one aides for him a couple of times, and they just his school has given a lot of pushback saying that there's not enough data to support that one-on-one aid right now. So maybe in the future, but we're not right now.
Okay. Just so in case other people on the call don't know what an RBT is, that's a registered behavior technician that is served underneath a behavior analyst. And then ABA is applied behavior analyst. So
thank you so much. I'm so bad at spouting off acronyms.
Well, I only do that because there's been a couple of times that I think everybody on the call understands what we're talking about, and then come to find out we're not. So I do try to know what those acronyms are. Another question that you guys, there's in here, and then I'm going to we're going to answer this last question, and then I want to leave a few minutes for you guys to ask us any questions. So as community members, how can we support your families and your experience? Abby, I can see you guys going for it, so I'm like, oh, go
first. So I think as far as community members, acceptance. So the other day we had to go into Walmart for something, and he was just screaming at the top of his lungs all through Walmart. He was upset, he was mad, and I have never been looked at so many times in my entire life. Like, there was just eyes on me the entire time. And like, I understand that something is loud, you're going to look, but like, I think in that situation, I would have rather someone, if they are looking, maybe be like, hey, can I help you? And I probably would have said, no, I'm okay. But like, that would have been better than just like blank stares and like shocked faces and like disgusted looks I mean, I don't know, but just acceptance, I think in general would be very helpful. Just kids are loud, like my child may be screaming at the top of his lungs in the middle of a Walmart, and there's not much I can do about it.
It looks like Adam whatever is reaching for it, right? Is that what your name is now?
That's my last name.
Okay.
In addition to what Abby was saying, when I grew up, it was common for people to say things like, when a baby would cry in a restaurant or in a grocery store, someone ought to shut that kid up. And it was kind of conveying the idea that when I go out in public, there are certain rules that need to be followed. But the truth of the matter is, and let's all be honest, like when we go out in public, someone can cut you off in traffic. Someone can cause an accident, you could die out there. Like, there's no guarantees when you leave your home what's going to happen out there. You may have to be subjected to the unbelievable trauma of a baby crying in the other eye. And I'm sorry, I'm being a little bit flippant, but it's going to happen. Like, there will be difficult situations where kids are acting up, and thereby one thing that happens is when kids are crying or acting up, a lot of times then adults also act up as well. So but there was one experience I had when we were going down to St. George for Christmas vacation, and we stopped at a gas station, and Max was having a meltdown, and we were standing right out in front of the gas station, and he was just wigging out. He was crying and screaming and yelling, and I was there. I was just standing by him, and I was trying to calm him. Someone drove by, he rolled down his window, and he said, "Hey, you're a good dad." That meant so much to me, just because, you know, you literally think that everybody's looking at you and judging you harshly, and it was really nice to see somebody judging me well. So so in answer to your question, like, what can you do in the community? Like, positively support. Try not to negatively support, or not negatively tear them down, negatively judge. Yeah.
So I just wanted to add real quick the need for, I guess what's already being talked about, but as the professionals and family people working with families with autism, but also I feel like kind of the theme here is some of the more severe disabilities. I feel like the message you can help spread to those that aren't around or educated, that these families and these children are a great part of our community, and they have a great value. And I guess just helping break down those barriers, like Adam mentioned, you know, in the olden days, like, get your, you know, kids need to be quiet and all of that. And that's just with our children, unless we had an experience where somebody didn't feel comfortable with, they were not quite comfortable with Ben. And so they were talking to us about it, about where the location is that we kind of interact with these families. And I said, you are never guaranteed. Nothing had happened, by the way. Benjamin hadn't done anything, but I said, you know, you're not guaranteed comfort anywhere you go. So why isn't Ben allowed to come and be a part of this place? Why is it that your child who can talk can tell the story of what happened, and Ben, who can't talk, is being told that he shouldn't be the one here? And I mean, I try to be very open. So I had done a lot of gathering information to understand the situation. And in the end, it really was just that they didn't like that Ben was there, and it kind of didn't make it feel the vibe that they wanted. And I really, means a lot to me, and I know other families, if you as professionals can advocate for our families, that we belong, that and we just want help too. If we're reaching out, you know, not to open up a whole other can of worms, but I've been really upset ever since the young man, he was 17, but that was shot by the police officers in Pocatello, Idaho. Because when I saw the video, I was unwise and watched the video. His mannerisms and his behavior, he was holding a knife, but it reminded me of Benjamin. You know, it reminded me, I could picture that scenario of Ben having a knife, and it's not like he's attacking with a knife, but oh, you're reacting to me, and we're trying to use a broom to knock it out of his hands. I know that sounds crazy. I know it sounds like you should never be in that situation, but the response that happened after that, there was a fence and they still unloaded on this young man. I mean, I felt so like, how are we going to protect these wonderful children who have big adult bodies, but they don't behave the way you want them to? And there has to be better education. So the professional community, I value so much what you're doing. And I would just ask you, find it in your heart to keep advocating for our families like ours, so that there's a place and an understanding and training provided, and just a general understanding that these children belong, and even if they're not behaving the way that you understand, or I'm not saying a kid should be able to walk around with a knife. I'm saying that let's have an appropriate response and an understanding of who these children are, and trust the families and what they have to say about it, and let's all work together on that for everybody's safety and everybody to have a place and to be valued that way.
Thank you all so much for those answers. We are over time, but I would love to have you guys be able to reach out to everybody on this call to get some answers or some suggestions that you all are dealing with. If you would all want to or are interested to be a case presenter at one of those times, I'll send you a separate email, and then we could just focus on your family and your child and your specific questions that we could answer that. I appreciate each of you sharing your stories with us. It's been just a great insight. I always love hearing from parents, and again, the kudos that you guys are just amazing parents. Your kids are lucky to have you, and what great advocates, and thank you for your insight. So we as some professionals can also help advocate for your children. Thank you everybody on the call. We will have our session again next month. We will be having Dr. Tom Higbee from the ASSERT program coming and talking to us about ABA, so Applied Behavior Analysis. Everybody enjoy your rest of your day.